coast-to-coast mentally ill people without reliable access to the costly, on-demand care they need are left to fend for themselves. In the aftermath of the movement in the 1970s to close large mental asylums, many of today's mentally ill are left to their own devices. They are often homeless and without full-time advocates. With government unable or unwilling to properly serve this population, the criminal justice system is left to pick up the slack. Contrary to what many assume, the mentally ill are most often the victimized and not the victimizers. A 2005 study by researchers at the Feinberg School of Medicine at Northwestern University found that persons with serious mental illnesses are 11 times more likely than the general population to be victims of violent crime, with perhaps as many as 1 million crimes committed against those with serious mental health issues each year. But relying on the police to address the problem has too often resulted in tragedy, not only on the mean streets of big cities, but in quieter places as well. In Butler County, Ohio, Bobby Ray Steele of New Miami died at the hands of police on October 26, 2007, after his arrest involving an incident with his father. Bobby Steele was a 40-year-old mentally retarded, paranoid schizophrenic. He had never lived on his own, and at the time of his death was living with his father, who was dying from cancer. On the day of his death, Bobby did not take his medication. He and his dad got into an argument over cat food, which was wet because it was left outside. Bobby was hitting his dad, so his dad made a fake 911 call to get Bobby to stop. He wanted Bobby to think he was calling the police, but he intended to dial and just hang up. He didn't know that deputies would come if he said nothing and just hung up the phone. Bobby's dad's plan worked. Bobby calmed down and the two of them went back into the back patio. Unfortunately, the police arrived and did the opposite of what they should have been trained to do. Training would have taught them to tell Bobby they were there to help by using calm voices, slow movements, and avoiding any threatening words or gestures. Instead, they threatened Bobby, yelled at him, and ultimately grabbed him in an attempt to arrest him. Bobby, now scared, tried to retreat into the house. One deputy slammed him to the ground. 4 additional deputies piled on top of him, and another deputy pepper sprayed him right in the face. Bobby's heart stopped, and he died at the scene. This killing has drawn widespread media attention, and today the Insider Exclusive goes behind the headlines in Police and the Mentally Ill, the Bobby Ray Steele story, and examines how Marc Pera, partner at the Pera law firm, successfully got justice for Bobby Ray and his family. The problem of police brutality against the mentally ill is much more widespread than most Americans are willing to admit. Our nation practices a selective blindness. In this great and strong nation, we have all become unwitting accomplices to the continuation of this problem. Marc understands that police brutality is one of the most serious, enduring, and divisive human rights violations in the United States. The problem is not just in Butler County, but nationwide, and its nature is institutionalized. Because of the pressure by media coverage, like the Insider Exclusive investigative TV series, many government officials across America are now acknowledging major failings in mental health care and oversight, and in the exchange of information between mental health providers and law enforcement. And in the case of Butler County, the police department has implemented a new training program for all of their police officers on how to deal with the mentally ill and mentally challenged people. The most important lesson officers are taught is how to have empathy for the person with the illness. Marc has seen many innocent and hardworking people become victims of improperly trained police officers, and because of that, he is driven to fight for people who have been harmed by the willful or negligent actions of others. His goals? Not only to get justice for his clients, but to make sure that similar incidents don't ever happen again at the Butler County Police Department or any other police department in America. Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive, live from Cincinnati, Ohio at the Pera Law Firm. It is my great pleasure to introduce Marc Pera to the show. Welcome to the show, Marc.
Thank you.
Tell our audience a little bit about what type of lawyer you are and what practices you pursue.
I represent people that have been hurt through the negligence of others. So we do medical malpractice work, we do workplace injury type of work, and we also do some excessive force type cases when police or deputies have crossed the line and harmed individuals. So anybody that's been hurt badly, we will try and represent and help if it's been because of someone else's poor actions.
Right. Now, originally, like a lot of lawyers, when you first graduated law school, you went to work for a defense firm.
I did.
And you had a philosophical change. Why is that, and what kind of lawyer does that make you today?
Well, I enjoyed the experience that I got when I was on the defense side of things, representing larger corporations and insurance companies. But I feel like I'm called to be on the plaintiff side. I'd rather help people that have been victimized. I'd rather help the little guy. I associate with them much better than I do the stiffer, large corporations. So I feel good about myself when I go to bed at night knowing that I'm trying to help widows or help people that have been paralyzed or help people that have been severely hurt.
And I want our audience to know that many of these people do not have the money to pay a lawyer.
Yeah, we do it all on contingency fees.
Yeah, so you have to select your cases carefully.
Very carefully. If we make a bad choice and we take a case that is borderline, we're going to end up paying for it in the long run. And the clients will end up paying for it because then they've gone through the stress of a lawsuit and they've been victimized all over again, and we don't want that to happen.
And sometimes these mistakes can be fatal to a law firm, can't they?
Well, to a law firm?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can certainly, I guess, take poor cases and knock yourself out of business. If you're going to take cases, the medical malpractice in particular, where you're going to put $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 into a case and you make several bad decisions, certainly you could knock yourself out of business.
This particular case we're going to be talking about today, the Bobby Ray Steele case, is a case of a wrongful death at the hands of the police through basically incompetent training.
Absolutely.
Can you tell our audience a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, Bobby Steele was a mentally retarded schizophrenic. He was 40 years old, had lived with his father, with his family, his entire life. He was someone that if you spent any time at all with him, you would immediately recognize that he had a mental illness. And mental illness is something that touches 1 in 4 families now. So it's something that police officers need to be trained on. Police officers are required to be trained on. In this case, they had not been receiving any type of training regarding how to interact and deal with the mentally ill.
Although they were supposed to.
Absolutely supposed to, required by federal law, required by Ohio law. All of the police associations out there have written on this, published it, absolutely should have been trained on it. So Bobby Steele wakes up one morning and he has not had his medication. He gets into an altercation, into a verbal dispute with his father, and begins hitting his dad a little bit. So his dad does what he had done in the past. He picks up a telephone and pretends to call 911, actually does call 911, and hangs up before the police arrive or before anyone answers on the other end.
Not realizing that the address of this 911 call would appear on the police.
Correct, correct. And his ploy worked. He scared Bobby straight, so to speak. They went back outside onto the back porch. They'd been fighting about wet cat food, of all things, cat food that had been left outside. So they're on the back porch. Deputies arrive from the Butler County Sheriff's Department. They hear Bobby and his father talking in the back, and they say that they hear yelling because Bobby's dad, Ray, is hard of hearing. So they're talking, there's no dispute going on, but when the deputies arrive, they immediately get aggressive with Bobby. And all of the training on how to deal with mentally ill says that you need to tell the ill person that you're there to help them, that you're not there to hurt them, that you need to talk in calm, soft, simple voices, that you should not make any gestures at them, you should not invade their personal space. Well, they do all of that. They yell at him, they threaten to take him to jail, they tell him to sit down, they order him around, and then they tell him that they're going to arrest him, and they go to grab him. Well, Bobby gets frightened, not understanding what's happening, and tries to retreat into the house to get to his bedroom, which is kind of his safe place.
Yeah.
So as he starts to walk towards the bedroom, back into the house, the officers take him down, they pile on top of him, they pepper spray him, they wait for more backup to arrive, they get on top of him, and ultimately when they get off of Bobbie, he's dead.
Yeah. Now, we happen to have a videotape of his father who passed on, Ray, also describing some of these events that happened, and it's a very brief thing, but I want to go to that right now because it shows an old man who knew what was wrong with his son, but the police weren't paying attention to it. So let's do that right now. Okay. Let's look at it.
So you could tell at that point that he was scared?
Yeah, I could tell he was scared, and that he was going to try to get in the house.
What happened next?
Well, he stood up, and he grabbed his shirt, and he ripped it off. He had a T-shirt on. And when he did that, the cops grabbed him. He was trying to get to had his hand on that table out there trying to get through the door. And that one boy, a younger cop, had him down and put his knee in his neck and his face against the concrete. The other cop was holding him. They were struggling. He was fighting. He was trying to get away and get in the house. And he wasn't fighting them. I mean, as far as hitting, as far as kicking, he never kicked one. I watched it.
What happened after the struggle ensued?
Well, he was down, and they rolled him over and put the handcuffs on him. And all at once, he was still. He just went still.
Now, when this case came to you, what interested you in it, first of all? And second of all, what did you hope to accomplish in prosecuting this case on behalf of the Steele family?
When the case came originally, and most of our cases come from other lawyers that refer the cases to us. When I got the case initially, I knew that these were hard cases. They're very difficult to prove because you have to prove that there is a custom or pattern that the county, in this case the county or the municipality, is creating. So I knew it was going to be a difficult case, but as we started to dig into it and learned how widespread mental illness is in the United States now, and learned how many of these types of things happen, where officers are not being properly trained and they're then seriously hurting or killing mentally handicapped individuals, it motivated us. We wanted to make things right, and the whole point of bringing the case was, number one, to try and help the family, but number two, to try and make sure that this would never happen in Butler County, or hopefully any county anywhere ever again.
And in our research in doing this show, we found that I think since 1997, the International Association of Police have, in effect, programs that they tell all the police departments, in effect, to help officers with mentally challenged people. Because today, we don't have the asylums that we had before the 70s, do we?
We don't.
Most of the mentally ill people are in jails. And the police have to deal with them, don't they?
That's right, and that's one of the things we established in depositions throughout this case. Every deputy that we talked to agreed that they come into contact with someone who is mentally ill on an almost weekly, if not daily basis. So they're everywhere.
What was the result of you getting involved with the case?
Ultimately, we were able to, first and foremost, we were able to change the way that deputies are being trained in Butler County. They now are being trained on how to properly deal with the mentally ill, and that's something that was a direct result of us bringing the lawsuit.
Right.
Second, and quite frankly, just as important, we were able to get some justice for the Steele family. We were able to obtain a settlement of $750,000. A good portion of what the Steele family received, they ended up donating to various churches in the Butler County area, because that's something that Bobbie's dad, Ray, had indicated that he would like to do, and the family wanted to honor his wishes as well.
Well, that's very kind of them. We happen to have some previously taped interviews of Bobbie's brother, and who I think was his best friend, right, Johnny?
Yeah, Johnny and Bobbie were very close. They used to fish together. They used to just spend time hanging out together. They would work in the garden together.
So let's go to that right now.
This wasn't right, and Bobbie didn't deserve this. This was something the boy didn't deserve. You know, we all have to die, but he didn't have to go the way he did. If they would have just eased up a little, that's all they had to do. That would have been it. Because Bobbie, if they had just let Bobbie go in the house, he would have been back in his own little world. And it had been all over with. Because it was over with whenever they got there. It was done and over. They done argued about the cat food and what have you. It's just a bad, sad thing that happened. And I miss both of them so bad.
We also have a previously taped interview of Sandy, who was Bobbie's sister, who actually witnessed what went down. And let's go to that right now so she can share that with us.
I'm positive that they killed Bobbie. By the way they acted, by withholding assistance to him, I think they killed my brother. They'd have just paused. If they'd have just talked to Bobbie, Bobbie couldn't even write his name. He couldn't even hardly write his name. 10 minutes talking to Bobbie, you would have known that, hey, you know, something's not quite right here. And I am sure that if they hadn't acted aggressive to him, he probably would have went with them. Because that was Bobbie. You know, you could talk him into anything. I was taking my grandson to school, and I drove by the road here, and I saw my dad there and Bobbie here, and I waved and went on to the school. And I was there probably 10, maybe 15 minutes, maybe not that long, just long enough to drop him off. I pulled in, an officer came to my car, and I seen that Bobbie was laying on the ground, and he shoved my car door, said, "Don't get out of the car." Shoved my car door closed. And Dad was sitting in the red chair there. And I was hollering Dad, and I said, "Dad, what happened? What's wrong? What's going on? What's wrong?" And Dad looked at me, and he was crying. He said, "I think they've killed Bobbie." Then I started screaming at the police officer, and I said, "What's the matter? What's wrong with him? Is he breathing?" I said, "Is he okay? Is he breathing?" And the police officer that was at his head, he was standing right here. He was standing right here. Bobbie's head was here on the ground. He was laying face up on the ground. He wasn't moving. He took his foot and nudged Bobbie with his foot and said, "Bobbie, Bobbie." He looked up at me and said, "Well, he's breathing now." Because he probably didn't understand why they were throwing him on the ground and jumping on top of him. He probably didn't understand. And I know he didn't fight. I know he didn't fight.
As a result of this case, as you brought up a couple of times, the Butler County Police Department now has changed their policies in dealing with mentally challenged people. What are some of the problems police are faced with, and what should they do? Where should they turn to help, get assistance so that they have the correct policies in effect?
Well, you mentioned one body of literature that's out there right now, the International Association of Chiefs of Police. They have literature that's out there. A simple web search shows all of the training materials that any
it's all on the
police
internet.
agency they can get that. I know that the Ohio Police Association puts out training materials. In fact, any new officer who's being trained in Ohio at the state level now gets training on how to deal with the mentally ill.
Yeah, and it all comes down to having empathy for these people who don't have the full capacity to react the way normal people do, which is really, what police officers have to do on a daily basis. Because let's face it, whether you're mentally challenged or not, every individual that you encounter has certain issues, and there are the best ways to approach them, right? And it isn't by brute force.
Absolutely. That's the worst thing you can do when dealing with someone who is mentally ill. They're going to be intimidated by the uniform. They're going to be intimidated by the handcuffs, intimidated by
the pepper
the badge, the pepper spray, the guns. All of that is very intimidating to them. So what they want to do is feel safe. And if the officers are trained properly, what they're going to do is come at it from an angle of, we're here to help.
Yeah.
They're going to listen to the mentally ill person voice their complaints or their issues, and they're going to take as much time as they need to take to get that mentally ill person to do what they ultimately need them to do.
When cases like this are referred to you, what do you look for before you decide to take a case like this?
Well, we do a lot of research. So we try and figure out, first of all, what happened. We look through all of the police reports, the statements that we can get our hands on to figure out whether or not some wrongdoing has taken place. From there, we of course talk to the family, we interview the family, and we just try and figure out, is this something that's just an isolated incident where an officer has kind of gone off the deep end, or is this a more systemic problem where we've got a police department that isn't training or isn't doing what it absolutely should be doing, which is putting all of the citizens in harm's way.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we look at, and every case is different.
And the neat thing about your job is if you're able to get justice for the family, you're also being able to change the way things are done so it's better for the community.
Yeah, I think the beauty of this case is that it exemplifies everything that is right with our justice system. We hear all the time about all of the things that are wrong with our justice system, but in this case, we're able to make a positive effect on the community so that everyone in Butler County, at a minimum, is safer now.
Yeah.
We were able to right a wrong. The only thing we can get for the family is that knowledge that a wrong has been righted, and then also compensation. That's the only thing we can get to balance those scales of justice, and we were able to do it in this case.
We did a great job, and I want to thank you very much for spending time with us on our show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.